welcome to the ARMA International web seminar titled Grant Thornton Presents SharePoint plus Next Page.
So what we were really looking for was something that I'm guessing many of you have probably also faced. I mean, one of the first discussions that we had 3 years ago was, well, why don't we just do what many firms have done over the years and adopt one of the large enterprise class document and records management systems, apply that across the entire firm and simply force everyone to manage all of their content inside of those systems. There was heavy resistance to that approach, and we didn't have to take that approach too far before we realized that culturally that was an approach that was very risky, and we were concerned that our chances of success, if we were to push that, were not particularly high. So what we decided at that time was, how can we kind of leverage existing work process? How can we look from a change management perspective at how people are currently doing their work and try to maintain as much as possible the status quo, meaning let's not force them to do too much differently because we know that's where we'll come up with change management issues. But let's see if we can't incorporate either through process or through technology some capabilities that will help encourage people, make it easier for them to both manage and track their content, but also be able to clean up and archive appropriately at the end of engagements. What many of you, it seems, from that first poll question that Sid asked, what many of you have probably experienced is also what we experienced here at Grant Thornton, and that is that there's been tremendous demand for SharePoint. And this demand has come in large measure in the context of what we're referring to as work group collaboration, right? It's those small teams of individuals getting together on an engagement, doing some work, and then disbanding and moving on to the next project or the next effort. We as a firm at that point didn't have any standardized client or work group collaboration technologies in place. Some of you may have adopted earlier versions of SharePoint. Some of you may have used Lotus Notes or Domino or other technologies, e-rooms, those sorts of things to do that sort of thing. We actually didn't have any of those technologies in place. It occurred to us as we were kind of comparing different projects and different initiatives going on at the time that if we were to take an approach where we standardized on work group collaboration for all of our engagements through SharePoint, where we knew that users already wanted that stuff, right? We wouldn't have to push too hard to get people to adopt SharePoint and to begin using these work group collaboration sites for their engagements, that might actually result in a pull instead of a push to get people into a centralized place where they're actually doing all of their engagement work. Now that was a good kind of first step for us, but we also recognized that once we got it in SharePoint, we still had the problem or the issue where, again, just based on current kind of user behaviors, people were still going to be emailing documents around. People were still going to be saving copies to their hard drives. People were still going to be putting, the same files out of SharePoint into, maybe a USB stick and passing it around the team. So we knew that even though we might be able to track centralized copies of many of our engagement files inside of SharePoint, that didn't necessarily help us with all of the ancillary copies that that go all over the place. And frankly, we didn't really even have a good sense as to how many files there might be and how much of an issue that might be. But our general sense when we were going into the process was, as Sydney alluded, we had a feeling that there were probably quite a lot of these documents going around, and that even with the deployment of SharePoint, we probably continue to see that happening. So we wanted to address that issue as well, the edge devices. How do we manage or at least provide visibility into where these files were going with ultimately the goal to be able to make it easier for end users to click a button and basically see all of their documents, no matter where they might exist at the end of an engagement, and facilitate their ability to choose the ones that they need to archive, and to facilitate and make easy for them the ability to get rid of everything else at the end of that engagement process. So, of course, with all of those kind of functional requirements, at the end of the day, we still, had and continue to have the same business drivers, and that was, reduce e-discovery cost and increase compliance to our policy, which again I think is fairly consistent with what I was seeing coming back on those polls at the beginning. So our approach, as you can see on this slide, a fancy little graphic, which really just designates that there were three facets to what we wanted to accomplish. Rather than taking, a heavy-handed kind of typical document or records management approach, we wanted to facilitate through collaboration and through SharePoint the ability to bring people together into a centralized location to begin to do their work consistently in a single kind of shared and managed environment. We wanted to facilitate their ability to comply with policy, meaning in particular make sure that they're consistently archiving the documents that by regulatory and legal requirements we need to apply a retention policy to and manage effectively. But also the third element, of course, is that large percentage of content that we don't and shouldn't keep around. We wanted to facilitate the ability to clean up that information at the end of engagements. So it was really a three-pronged approach. What we've actually kind of put some marketing and some messaging around what we refer to as C3, and something that we're still in the fairly early stages of beginning to deploy this, but we've seen some very, very good traction so far as we've gone through this.